I don't want to be married to a limiting belief. We grip onto the beliefs we have. We all have limiting beliefs, but the more we are exposed to other perspectives, ideas, experiences, the more we can challenge those beliefs. For me, my identity was very much tied to those beliefs. And now I want to engage with folks that think differently because it sharpens my ideas. I really encourage people, challenge your beliefs, challenge them.
What is up, Impact Heroes? Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Rick Ornelas. Thank you for spending some time with us today because we know time's a valuable resource and we're going to make it worth your while. I appreciate each and every one of you, not just for listening, but for who you are. I know you're sparking change to make the world a better place every day, and I am humbled and grateful for your efforts. It takes all of us doing our part to spread positive change, and that's what this show is all about. Motivating you with stories of struggle, courage, and hope to empower you to make a difference in your life and the lives of others.
In case you missed it,
success is about building relationships and being with people.
Available everywhere you listen to your podcasts.
Welcome back, Impact Heroes. Today we have the pleasure of speaking to our latest iSpark Change social impact hero, and she is a special one indeed. Our guest today is a catalyst for change and an influential voice in diversity, equity, and inclusion. She has a unique ability to foster connections while promoting a culture of acceptance and diversity of thought. Awesome. She is funny, authentic, and engaging as a storyteller and a keynote speaker. She's someone who strives to transform conversations, challenge perceptions, and inspire action toward a more inclusive, vibrant, and equitable world. We definitely need more of that. She has a deep understanding of the human experience and is always encouraging new ideas and embracing a yes and no mentality rather than choosing sides. We need more of that in the world too, for sure. So please welcome the authentic, driven, empowering, and amazing proud author of Trailblazers in Canada, Barbara Yebuga. Welcome to the iSpark Change podcast, Barbara. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Rick. It's so good to be here with you today. How are you doing?
Fantastic. Thank you for coming on for a bit so we can learn more about you. And we see you, Barbara, as someone that is spreading positive change in the world. You know, I know you were referred by another guest, Sunny McGraw. So, you know, she was on the show as what we call a social impact hero, and you are as well, because we see you as someone that spreads positive change, that your actions have a positive effect on humanity, and by our definition, that's a social impact hero. So my first question to you, which I ask all my guests on this show, and being our theme, is we see you as a hero. Do you see yourself as a hero?
Wow. Well, what a way to start off the conversation, Rick. Do I see myself as a hero? My initial response and answer would be no. I don't see myself as a hero. That's not to downplay the impact of the work that I do. I'm very aware and appreciative and even humbled by the impact that I'm now seeing my work has made. I will tell you, when I started, that was not the case. It was kind of like, I'm going to just do what I think I ought to do, or what's pushing me to action. I think, you know, being a hero, I think for all of us, it comes down to humanity and wanting to be seen and wanting to be included. And that has always been my Northern Star. That's always been what has driven me to do my work and to engage with other humans the way I do. We want to be seen. We want to belong. And it's no secret to you, Rick, or myself, that there's a lot of division. There's a lot of polarizing conversations. There's a lot of just hate in the world. And I love diversity of thought. I love to engage with folks that don't think like me, that don't behave like me, that don't look like me, that don't have the same experiences as me. I don't need another me to bump shoulders with. I'm very comfortable with who I am, and I love who I am, and I know my experience, and I appreciate the value of my experience. And I want to expand my perspective and expand my understanding and ultimately expand my empathy. And that comes from engaging with folks and seeing where you can make impact in your wheelhouse, in your community, in your family. that's really what drives me. So it's humbling, and I receive it being seen as a social impact hero. But it really comes down, or I should say, and it really comes down to me just wanting to leave the world and our society in a better place. Not to sound like a PBS special, but that's truly where it comes down to for me.
No, well, that's great, and thank you for sharing that, Barbara. And I will say that it's probably like a 70-30 split when I ask that question. That 70% of people say they don't, guests on the show, that they don't see themselves as a hero. And by our definition, a hero is essentially just impacting others in a positive way. It could be one person, right? Just one person. It doesn't have to be millions or even billions. We've had people that have affected billions on the show. And it's, I think what you're sharing, what you shared about wanting to learn more about others, that's the same mentality that I have. And it reminds me of the quote from Abraham Lincoln where he said, I don't like that man. I must get to know him better. And so often it's because we just, we don't, because historically, or, I'd say evolutionary wise, we grew up thinking that, it's like this us or them mentality, right? You have your clan or your tribe, and you're like, oh, those outsiders, right? They could mean trouble. They could come to, to steal our food or to kill us or harm us or, or abduct, some of our members or whatever. And that's just so pervasive in society that it's just not the case. It's just not the case. Maybe it was, thousands of years ago, but now it's like, yeah, we're just all human beings. We're all here on this planet. Mostly trying to do the same things, like you said, be seen, be heard, be understood. Just the fundamental tenets of human need. Beyond like food, clothing, and shelter, and so, obviously we need more people doing what you do. So share with us, every hero has their origin story. So share with us, what I'm most interested in is how you got on that path of, were you always, like when you were younger, were you always someone that wanted to learn about others, or was this something that was, kind of evolved over time about, getting into the DEI field and all of that?
Yeah, it definitely stemmed from my upbringing. So I'm born and raised Toronto, Canada, and very proud Torontonian. Shout out to my Toronto folks and listeners.
Is that how you say that, Torontonian? I never knew that.
Torontonian, yeah. Come on, Rick. We're asking.
I've had a lot of people from Toronto on the show, and spoken to hundreds of people from all across the world, but I've never heard that. And a lot of people from Toronto, as I told you off air, but I've never heard that phrase.
Torontonian. Look at that. I'm expanding now your vocabulary.
I'm smarter now. I'm smarter today for learning that. Thank you.
We can end the interview right here. We're done.
Well, I'm on a high note right now, so we'll just go with that. But please continue. Sorry to interrupt.
No, I appreciate it. So, Toronto is quite the diverse, multicultural city. It really is. And I think that I had an upper hand because of it. That's definitely a privilege I have, is being born and raised in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. So in my community, my neighborhood, every race, culture, creed, religion, shape, size, abilities, I really was surrounded by what I now know is called diversity. Right. But then it was just, that's my neighbor. Right. And, I had people in the community that, Indian aunties, they were my aunties, Korean uncles, they were my uncles. And it was just such a beautiful upbringing that now I appreciate. But growing up, that was all I knew, right? My grandparents, my family is originally from Uganda. And so when we came here through Amnesty International, we formed a community, and we had my two grandparents who adopted me were white Scottish Irish background, and they were my grandparents. No one could tell me different, right? And if anything, they had to tell me later, actually, we're not biologically, but, you are my granddaughter and I love you abundantly. So that was my upbringing, around the dinner table, Korean, Vietnamese, Filipino, Nigerian, Trinidadian, you name it. It was the world, right? We're like the United Nations. Yeah, so fast forward to now, as an adult and moving through, my career and growing up, my parents always told me the opinions of other people, none of your business. Pay no mind to what people's opinions are. As long as you believe in yourself, you're proud of yourself, you're staying true to your moral compass, that's all that matters. But then I started to notice, some behaviors or thought patterns, beliefs that didn't really align to what I was told. And I remember very vividly having a manager. This was early in my career days, in the financial field, and my manager at that time had this belief that Black folks were created to drown. They don't have the ability to swim like regular folk, and that's why this was her honest feedback to me. She's like, "Yeah, it's a problem. Black folks don't know how to swim." And for context, Rick, my family, we come from swimmers. My grandmother swam across the Nile with my pregnant mom on her back. I love to swim, so I'm scratching my head, and I'm like, "But that is not true." I think even that year, the Olympic, winner at the time for swimming was a Black woman. So I'm scratching my head trying to understand, where did she get this idea that Black folks generally can't swim, that we're quote unquote created to drown? And a lot of these, what were microaggressions, we would call it, but it was quite macro to me at that time, if I were to be honest. I was so confused by her reasoning. And it, on the surface, it may seem like, okay, she just has this misconception about, the ability of Black folks, or physical ability. But then I thought about my performance review and thought about, wait, you are responsible for evaluating me and my abilities. And if you already have this bias about, a certain group of people, well, that has some really real implications to my compensation, to my advancement in my career. And so I had a conversation with her. I said, we need to be mindful about these ideas we're just throwing out. And how did you come to this conclusion? And she said, "Barbara, this has been my experience. Back where I came from," she immigrated here from Poland. She said, "that was what I was taught in schools, that, Black folks are inferior to us." And I won't lie, in the moment I was infuriated, but then I thought to myself, well, it's not her fault that was what she was taught, right? If that was what I was taught, and now I'm a grown woman and I still have those lessons, that's what I was taught. And so essentially I saw, okay, the education system failed her. And it really comes down to education for me, and awareness. That's a big part of the work I do. And so I decided that I wanted to do something about it. I wanted to change the stories that we were hearing in school, just like this manager of mine, she had a story and a narrative that was taught to her in school about a certain group of people. I wanted to make sure that we were giving a more wholesome and well-rounded, view and history of diverse folks. So I started going into schools, right? And I started getting to the source, which was school, education. What are we teaching our children? And sharing stories of, that's actually how my book, Trailblazers in Canada, came to fruition, was me highlighting stories of diverse folks who have done exceptional things in our society in spite of, a lot of the barriers that they face. So that's a long way to answer your question of how I got to where I am now. And to be honest, Rick, it's just kind of taken a life of its own as far as the opportunities and the organizations I'm now working with. And I just really focus on creating inclusive spaces for workers, employees, members, community members to live and thrive, and to just bring that awareness. We're so fortunate to live in a time where we have access to so much information. We can be exposed to different cultures and different people and their experiences. We are more connected than ever before. So I'm really leaning into that. And that's essentially how I got into it. But I never thought in my life, going to school or thinking about what I'd be, I never thought I'm going to be a DEI, EDI, however you want to throw the acronyms, professional or consultant. It truly organically happened. And I love my work. I love what I do.
Yeah, I can feel your passion and, when you describe it. And I think the education part is so important, and how you mentioned that, it wasn't necessarily her fault. That's how she was educated. Something that popped into my mind as you were describing that, Barbara, was a limiting belief. Now, limiting belief is something that is most often used internal, right? Like we have limiting beliefs about ourselves, like I can't do this or I can't do that, the saying, if you think you can, you think you can't, you're right. I always crack up that Henry Ford gets credit for that, but Buddha said it like 1,000 years earlier where, but
exactly.
Anyways, but as far as that limiting belief, would you say that, okay, so knowing that that's how most people look at limiting beliefs, is it's something internal, I know it's been popularized by personal development and everything, especially lately. But would you say for a lot of people, like your former boss there, that because of their education, because of their upbringing that they have, what I'm calling a limiting belief, in their mind, that's some limitation that they're placing on something. In this case, ability to swim. Is that something? Would you say it's as simple as that, or that there's a lot more that goes into it?
Oh yeah, I think there's so many elements. You can have a limiting belief and it can be dissolved or changed if it's something's countering it. But when that limiting belief is reinforced by your family, by rules, policies, by your friends, then it's a little more challenging to get out of those limiting beliefs. But it definitely stems from, you asked earlier, like, what was my experience? I was talking about my childhood, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not here saying that I don't have limiting beliefs. There's a lot of, if anything, I think I was blindsided by the idea of microaggressions and being discriminated and racism or ableism. I was very naive to that because, again, my experience, fortunately, was that I was so exposed to such diversity that I was naive that there were issues or that some folks are being discriminated, right? But this is why I come back, Rick, to that awareness, right? Where we all have limiting beliefs, but the more we are exposed to other perspectives, ideas, experiences, the more we can, challenge those limiting beliefs. I think some folks, and I'm guilty of this too, we hold so tightly, we grip onto the beliefs we have because, for me, my identity was very much tied to those beliefs. And now I think about it as, no, I want to engage with folks that think differently because it sharpens my ideas. And I don't want to be married to a limiting belief. I don't want to be married to a belief that is not true, right? That's not really serving me, right? So I really encourage people, challenge your beliefs because you might have a limiting belief, right? Challenge them.
Yeah, and most of us, well, basically all of us, are a product of our upbringing, society, the influences, the world around us. Everything that creates the person that we are. So, what would you say? What advice would you give to individuals that are? Because, like you, I was raised, that we're all children of God. We're all, equal. Everything like that, right? I will say my father, who was much older, he was, when I was born, he was 49. So he was, much older father. He would throw racial comments here and there. And, myself and my sisters would always, correct him and stuff like that. Not my mom, because she was 16 years younger, but, my dad a little bit. And, being Hispanic, there's still, stereotypes and cliches and, around that as well, different from African-American, but right. Some similarities there. Yep. So we're all a product of that education, right? But what would you say to the individual that in our society that is so polarized, as you mentioned earlier, that is so, divisive, and it's just all over the place, and in everything we see in social media and politics, which is a whole nother arena, and all this stuff. What would you say to the individual to help foster that curiosity rather than that, that tribal mentality, rather than that, oh no, they're the others that I mentioned in the beginning? What would you say because I've always been a curious person. I want to learn every day, just Torontonian, just learning that today, like that excites me, right? Just to learn that. And so what would you say to those individuals to help motivate them, to look at it in a different light?
Oh, that's such a great question. I feel like we could have a whole episode just on that question.
I'm sure.
So yeah, I think to start, we really have to manage expectations. So I don't come into conversations, at least I try my best not to come from a lens of, I'm going to try to convert Rick. I have this idea and I'm going to convert him and I'm going to bring him to my side so he understands my way of things. I think we need to appreciate that two truths, or more than two truths, more than one truth can exist. Mm-hmm. And I think you talked about in my intro that, my mentality is yes and, not yes or. We both can have yes and no, yes or no. So I I come back to, put on your Dora the Explorer hat. I don't know if we have any Dora the Explorer friends, and explore different people's mentality. If at the end of the day, Rick, I have this conversation with you and I can say, I'm not here to necessarily agree with you. I just want to have a better understanding, because the chances are the way you think, likely there are other folks that think like you, hundreds of other folks, thousands, millions of other folks that probably think like you. And it's not my job to, convert you or you to convert me. The job is to just get an understanding of where you stand and understand your experiences. And if I can do that, then I can be better informed in how I move in this world. I was talking about it with a leader, and he was saying, Barb, I'm really struggling with these pronouns, the she, her, they, them. I don't know the LGBT. I don't even know the rest of the acronym. There's just so much going. I don't know. And I said, okay, you know what? That's where you're at. I'm also, I've been on that journey. But the fact that you're aware that pronouns are important to folks, that's a win. Like, you now understand that, okay, I don't get it. There's a lot of letters going on. I might mess up, but I am aware now that this is something that I have to be sensitive to. I have to be aware of. I don't have to understand it, right? I identify as a cisgendered, heterosexual woman. I don't have the experience of a homosexual, woman or man or person. But I can appreciate that we all have our own prerogative of how we choose to love. And can we just accept that people have different ways of loving, and we can respect that? I'm very much about, know your limit, play within it. So I really want to, know your limit. So I'm not here, trying to educate folks on, like, for example, I'm not good in the kitchen. I'm not a good cook. Love food, but I'm not a good cook. It would be out of my zone to try to educate you, Rick, or school you on that, because that's not my wheelhouse, right? Or I know when there were like protests happening, Black Lives Matter, I'm sure you remember post George Floyd, a lot of protests, and folks were saying, well, Barb, you're in the DEI space. We didn't see you on the streets. You weren't marching. You weren't. And I said, yeah, because I'm in my lane. I'm a writer. I'm writing books. I'm coaching leaders. I'm doing story time with children in schools. You're not going to see that. I don't necessarily always post that out there, but this is my wheelhouse. This is my lane. This is where I choose to affect change. So I know this is a roundabout way of answering your question as far as getting folks to mind shift, but the key takeaways for me is, it's not about converting people. It's about just getting a better understanding of this world. We're more globalized and interconnected than ever before. As a business leader, if you're not really understanding people, your business is going to suffer. It's going to affect your bottom line, really. So it is in your benefit. Again, it's not about converting. It's about understanding the people you are serving. And then, secondly is, know your wheelhouse, know where you can actually affect change, because sometimes when people come at you with, this is what's going on with the world, this is what's going on in the world, Rick, what are you going to do? Sometimes we can feel overwhelmed or, disengaged, because they're like, this is beyond me. I can't, but what can you do in your wheelhouse, in your circle, in your family, with, with your friends, in your workplace, that can impact change or influence, or at least start the conversation of understanding? That's really what I want to get down to, is like just an understanding that we have different lived experiences and that we may not see eye to eye, but we can coexist, right? There's so much going on in the world with conflict, and it amazes me that we have people leading that don't know how to disagree in a peaceful way.
Yeah, everyone thinks, it goes back to what you're saying, everyone thinks that they have to convince the other person. And I've even struggled with that with, like family members, for example, in conversations, is that, being someone that's a coach and a forward thinker and everything, that it's like, oh yeah, if I could just get them to see this point, not with regards to, DEI or anything like that, just in having some kind of random conversation. Right. And I think the more people can do what you're saying, is just seek to have a level of understanding that would take people so far, so far forward, that, I mean, that in itself, it sounds so simple, right? Not easy, but simple. It's like, just seek for a level of understanding, right? Don't try to convince. That would, like, move mountains. That would be incredible. And the second thing that, really stood out, what you were just sharing, Barbara, was in business. So I've coached over 200 business owners in the past 8 years as a coach and consultant. And I'm always in essence, I'll say preaching to them the importance of their people, right? And that their people are going to be what builds their business and makes or breaks their business success. And, for the past few years, since COVID, so for the past 3 years, it's been all about having a good understanding of your people and, 5 generations in the workforce and all the diversity in the workplace and people from all over the world. And luckily for me, with my platform and everything, I've been able to interact, as I told you off air, with hundreds of people from all across the world. And that, I feel, really seeking to understand in that capacity, right? In every podcast interview and every Zoom call, really seeking to understand and ask questions and learn. That, I think, has helped me grow as an individual immensely, right? As an individual immensely, and my level of ability to communicate and in so many ways. And I think, tell me your opinion, Barbara, but I think sometimes we go into those interactions so selfishly and self-servingly that if we can take the other approach, and maybe it has to start from a selfish place, but say, hey, if I seek to understand, I'm going to gain in this interaction. I'm the one that's going to learn. I'm the one that's going to grow. If I just put the other person first for just a few minutes, then, which, it's like giving, and you give and you're the one that ends up receiving. If we can just think that, maybe that's what it takes to get people to switch. But what do you think?
I couldn't agree more with you, Rick. I'm like aggressively nodding my head, like, yes, 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 yes. My Brene Brown, I think she actually is from Texas. Is she not? Or Houston?
She is, yeah. She's from Brown. Yeah, she's from Houston.
Yeah.
She's from right here. Yeah.
I adore that woman. One of the quotes that always sticks with me, she says, we're not here to get it right. Sorry, we're not here to be right. We're here to get it right. And that changed everything for me, because as someone, I'm not going to lie, I have an ego, surprise, surprise. I like to, show that I know things. But when she said that, it changed how I entered conversations. It changed how I entered into rooms or how I facilitated. And I feel that if more of us approached problems in that way, it would all serve us really, really well. Another quote that sticks with me too is a lesson that I learned from my father. May he rest in peace. He was one of my best friends, and I have a lot to owe to him for how I am today. He definitely was someone who was for the people. And as I started to progress in my life and take on more leadership roles, he would always say to me, as your job as a leader, and I think it is for all people, is that you are to be tough on problems, soft on people. And so what stuck with me for that is like, okay, I'm persistent, where I'm not naive that there's a lot of, again, we talked about polarization. We have wars going on. There's real problems that we're facing in the world that we really need to look at and problem solve for, find solutions for. Like yesterday, okay, like decades ago. And so it can get challenging when you're trying to find understanding and you're trying to be hard on the problem because you're passionate about it. But oftentimes that can translate into just being aggressive and hard on people. And that, of course, you lose engagement, in that approach. So for me, I always say, I think of my dad, be soft on people, seek to understand, not to convert, really, really come in with an open mind. And then take those lessons and be really hard on the problem to figure out how we can solve for the problem now that we have a greater understanding and a greater perspective.
Yeah, wise words from your father. And yeah, I really love that. And it makes me think of something that one of my mentors taught me, and it was a sales technique, but I think it really applies here. And he was saying that, you never want to sit across from the desk from the person that you're talking to. You want to go and sit aside them and align yourself with them so you're on the same side of the table, right? And you're not in this adversarial, I'm here, you're there position. And, when you do that, seeking first to understand and, when you align yourself with the individual, then you can work on the solution, right? You're saying being tough on the problem. Then you can create the solution together, because now you're working together, you're working side by side. And that's a far, I'd say, stronger place, or more advantageous place for both individuals to be, working in alignment with someone, than to be, two opposing. Even if you think of physics, I mean, it makes sense to just be in alignment with the other individual.
Absolutely. Finding that common ground, right? We're very, very clear about where we're not in agreement on, or, the lack of common ground. But if we can find a common ground, that really anchors us to move forward.
Yeah. And it goes back to what you're saying. And I believe, just fundamentally, all humans want to be heard, they want to be seen, and they want to be understood, right? So if we're seeking to being understood, right, then seeking to understand, right, that's common ground right there. Hey, I know you want to listen to me. I know you want me to listen to you, and I want to listen, you want me to listen back, right? Or you want to understand, we all want the same things, right? We all want just at the basic things. Fundamental level, we all want the same things.
If we get these rules of engagement that we're talking about, Rick, really, again, I don't want to sound like a PBS special, but we could change the world. We could change. I feel like we need to have either like a degree, a study that really focuses on, really trying to find common ground, how to just communicate. What are our rules in engagement as, politics and religion and wars? We really need to understand how to engage again with each other. The same way with our children in the playground, we're teaching them how to share, to listen. I feel like we need to get back to basics.
Yeah, it seems so simple. It seems so simple. Yeah. Like I said, simple, but not always easy. You talk about having a degree. I mean, I have a degree in communication, and I have to work on it every day, as my wife of 27 years reminds me all the time. But I feel, I want to learn. I've taken, dozens or hundreds of courses, and, been coached by many different individuals that are far smarter than I am and everything. And yet I know how much growth I need to undergo to continue to learn and improve my communication. And maybe it's as simple as, going back to, I forget who he is. It's, I think, Grigsby, his last name is Grigsby, I think, where he talks, his book is, everything, what is it? He learned from a third grade dropout. And he talks about, he's a motivational speaker, and he talks about his father who never made it past the third grade, and all the wisdom that he gained from his father. I think his last name is Grigsby, the motivational speaker, but it's like you said, just playground rules. If we went with some playground rules and we threw those into Washington, that would probably be okay.
Right? I mean, come on, asking for a friend. Can we just someone tap, some of those leaders in that white building of yours? Hey, we're over here on the north side, of the border. We're also struggling. I mean, our government has committed to, I believe it's 1.5 million newcomers to Canada. And this comes back to really finding understanding, because these are new folks that we're welcoming to the country. Do we know how to properly integrate? Do we understand who these new people are, their experiences, their cultural backgrounds? Because whether we like it or not, I'm not here to talk the politics of whether or not it's a good idea to let 1.5 million newcomers in. That's a different discussion. The point is, it's happening, and are we prepared? Are we prepared to have an influx of diverse folks, different generations, different backgrounds, culture, different languages, different work experiences? We have to appreciate the times we're in, right? Again, we're more connected than ever before, and now we're forced to having to work together, live together, play together. What does that look like for us? And so there's real work we have to do, and a lot of it starts with these conversations, right? Having, sometimes I call them uncomfortable conversations, sometimes I call them courageous conversations, but let's start having dialogue and not be afraid of, the differences that we have, and again, find that common ground that will anchor us to live a more inclusive, world.
Yeah. Playground rules. That's it.
Playground rules.
It is. You said play together, right? It's like sandbox playground rules. That's our solution. Maybe I'll write a book called Playground Rules. And
I'm waiting for it, Rick.
Yeah, let's go. You can be a contributor.
Yes.
So we could probably talk about this, like you said. These would be whole shows or whole other shows, but But Barbara, what would you say, part of our acronym for being a hero is honoring your purpose. So what would you define, just simply as your current purpose right now? Because I can tell without knowing your purpose that you're honoring it all the time in the work that you do. I mean, I can glean that for sure, but what would you define as your purpose?
My purpose is to be a good ancestor. I want the next generation to know, okay, they did what they could, and I'm leaving at least some kind of foundation for them to then take it further. It being inclusivity, it being more people being seen and heard, it being more collaboration and less folks feeling like they have to live and work and go through life in a silo. You said it earlier, Rick, we all want to be seen and heard, all of us. No one is exempted from that. We all want to feel like we belong. We all want to find and feel our purpose. And we have to create an environment and a society where that is encouraged and it is supported and there's an investment in it. Because when we're not, we have, problems and challenges like that manager I spoke of, right? When we're not, when, that is not the case and that's not what's being supported. So that really is my purpose. Is I want to be a good ancestor. I want to give people some of the experiences that I wish I had, whether specifically in my career and being the person that I am as a woman, as a Black woman, a young Black woman in spaces, just trying to navigate a lot of, spaces that quite frankly weren't really created for folks like me, and this isn't a pity party story. It's just, it is what it is. So I really, really want that. I just want I want our society to live a better life, a better world than what we have right now.
Yeah, I've never heard it put that way, be a better ancestor. And it really speaks to, just wanting to leave things better than how you found them. Right. Which is, again, I mean, playground rule, right? Playground rule, it goes back to that, but it's, again, so simple but so impactful. And I think that, in our instant gratification, wasteful society, people aren't thinking about tomorrow. They're not thinking about, maybe their children if they're lucky, but definitely not their grandchildren or their great-grandchildren or, future generations. And having that mentality will really it will make lives better down the road, but hopefully it makes, lives better today. So that's
Absolutely.
a very noble purpose. So thank you for sharing that. Well, one question that I always ask our guests here, Barbara, on the show is about spark moments. And a spark moment is a moment in life where your actions or the actions of another have a ripple effect that goes far beyond that initial act. And it could be something that you did for someone else, or something that they did for you, or told you, or impacted you in some way, or you impacted them, where you may not even see that ripple effect, but just that initial act is enough to, cause a difference. So share a story of a spark moment, or example of a spark moment where you were impacted or someone else impacted you. Obviously, your boss having that conversation with you, that could be considered a spark moment, but share an example for us.
Yeah, no, I love this question. One that really sticks out to me was, this was maybe a couple or a few years ago, and I was invited to participate or listen in on a webinar, and one of my mentors, she's a wonderful woman, Catherine Tremblay. She's CEO of this great recruitment firm here in Canada. Really successful woman, and I really honor and respect her. She's my mentor and sponsor, so that says enough. So she said, Barb, you should join in. I think you'll really, take to this webinar. So I said, okay, no problem. I'll probably be a few minutes late. I hop on, and it's this woman, and I'll describe her. She's a beautiful woman, and I believe she's of a European descent. She has long blonde hair, blue eyes. She had her makeup done. She looked flawless. She looked like she should be on the cover of a magazine. And she's talking, around inclusivity, and it's all in the DEI space. And Rick, I don't know what was going on with me that day, but I was feeling my own feelings. I mean, there was a lot going on. There was a lot of racial tension in the news, etc. And she's talking about hardships, and this is very humbling. In the back of my mind, I'm saying to myself, well, who does this woman think she is? She's experienced hardships? Really? Mm-hmm. Look at you. Like, I can tell you a thing as a Black woman living and working in these white spaces with these cisgendered males. This is the dialogue going internally. Of course, outwardly, I'm smiling, I'm nodding, I'm taking in what she's saying. But I'm like, who does this woman think she is? Like, she should not be the one talking about hardships. After 45 minutes, the webinar, ends, and she's talking high level of different themes. And at the end of it, she says, thank you. And there's a photo, and she goes back, and I see her legs are amputated. Rick, when I tell you, I got a healthy serving of humble pie. And it was one of those like aha light bulb moments where we are so easily quick to judge folks and assume their experiences and assume who they are based on their aesthetic, their name, their whatever. Mm-hmm. And imagine myself, Miss DEI advisor consultant, Miss inclusivity officer. These are the conversations I was having in my own mind. And I was so humbled by it. And she has changed my life, this woman and that story. It has changed me so much because now I move differently. I never assume what someone's experience is. I never assume what they're anything. I really try not to assume, because that hit me so hard, especially because of the energy I was coming in. I was on whatever I was experiencing that day, something happened that made me feel othered or made me want to judge someone else. So that was my aha moment. You don't know what people are going through. And again, it was a Zoom call, right? So I could only see her face pretty much on top of her body. For sure. So we all are dealing with our own challenges, and we're all looking for inclusivity from our different lenses and vantage points. So yeah.
Well, that is a fantastic spark moment. Thank you for sharing that, Barbara, because it speaks to the two things. It speaks to the importance of, first, being open to learn what you were talking about from the beginning, right? Being open to learn, regardless of what, you may see on the front, right? To learn what there's definitely deeper layers. I always think of Shrek, where he's like an onion and there's layers and layers and layers. And then secondly, about the spark moment is that ripple effect. It had an impact on you. It continues to have an impact on you, and will continue to have an impact on you and all the thousands of others that you will impact as well. And, true example of a spark moment. So I appreciate you sharing that. So before I ask our final question, I know our audience will want to learn more about you. So how can they connect with you? Where's the best place to, see your work and learn about you?
Yes, you can find me on most social media platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram, Barbara Yebuga. You can also go to my website, barbarayebuga.com. You can see I write a lot of, there's a lot of good content as far as like articles and blog posts, and I'm often doing podcasts. The big thing, though, that I do is facilitated conversations and workshops. So I work with leaders in organizations as well as their teams, executive teams, people in culture, human resources, to really support them in creating inclusive, equitable, cultures within their companies and within their, employee groups. So you can find more information on that on my website as far as the different workshops that I facilitate. Some are specifically geared for leadership. Others are more for general employee base. And it's gotten a lot of great traction, a lot of great feedback I've gotten on it. People are really eager to learn and ask questions. And I really am proud that I'm able to create safe spaces for folks to ask questions, the taboo questions, so to speak, or, what's not politically correct. It's really no ego, no dumb question. Come as you are. We're going to figure it out together.
Well, fantastic. Well, we'll put all that in the show notes. And I have gone through some of your content on LinkedIn, and it is excellent. Great tips there. There's something I was reading about safe space for feedback and everything on your LinkedIn. So some good stuff. So we'll make sure that that's in the show notes so everyone can access that. So final question here, Barbara, because our goal at iSpark Change is to positively impact 1 billion people through the next 5 years as we launch our future social impact social media platform. And we know we can't do this alone. We know we need the help of individuals like you, impactful leaders that can show others the way, because many people feel, as I once did, that they're too small to make a difference. So we value your thoughts and opinions as a social impact hero, as you are. You are a hero. Hopefully you believe it now. So I'm going to ask you to peer into the future, peer into the iSpark Change crystal ball, and tell me, what can the world become if everyone starts seeking to understand and believing that they can have a positive impact on our future?
Ooh. You know what? For starters, my role wouldn't be needed. There'd be no DEI consultant. There'd be that, and that's truly my wish is that, when I started this work, there was no DEI, anything, EDI, like these terms and acronyms. There was no such thing. And now, because of our social climate, we now have roles. We have full teams that are dedicated to this work. My hope is that we don't need it. We don't need DEI advisors anymore. It's just how we live, work, play, and it's just part of the fabric of of our society. That's really what I hope is that it's just becomes it's not this big scary topic, inclusivity, and equitable practices. It's not this big scary mission. And I really hope that I think about mothers, I think about fathers, I think it's just parents. And when you talk about being a hero, they're my ultimate heroes, because yes, you can be on podcasts, and yes, you can be on TV, you can be a politician, but the influence that a parent has on their child, or I'd often say, to a woman, the influence you have on your husband, so much more than me. The intimate conversations you're having around the dinner table, in your bedroom, that is where actually the real spark of change happens. So I really just encourage, people that you can have impact, in your circle, in your community, in your home. And that's really where it starts. So that's what I see. I see that, parents and caregivers are really, leaning into their roles of being heroes to spark change, and that we don't need DEI folks, and it's not so taboo. It's just how we live. We know how to be inclusive and equitable, and we're not scared to continue to learn.
Yeah, I appreciate, you saying that you want to put yourself out of a job, but it's, it speaks to really that impact that it could have, and that it starts, that it does start at home and everything. So that is super important. So Thank you so much, Barbara. It's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you for taking time to share your heart and wisdom with our audience. You came in, you over-delivered, as I knew you would. Your desire to be impactful is evident, and you're filled with passion, determination, and you lead with a heart of service and equity, which tells me you will continue to have success in all facets of life. And this is only the beginning of your time as a social impact hero.
I appreciate you, Rick. Thank you so much.
All right. Okay, Impact Heroes, it's our stories that connect us all. We love hearing Barbara's today. Barbara Yebuga, you're not only an inspiring and amazing human being, you truly are an iSpark Change social impact hero. We'll see you all next time.
Do you want Rick to speak at your event? Here's what others have to say.
Did not know his story, and it was so inspirational, and his presence on stage, his authenticity was just incredible.
Performance made me feel some type of way. My name is Craig Siegel.
If you're looking for a speaker for your next event, hire Rick. I promise you this, you will not be disappointed.
Visit rickcornelis.com to book him today.
Remember, Impact Heroes, every positive action can be a spark moment that has a ripple effect that spreads far beyond the initial act. So go out there and spark change. Don't forget, if you enjoyed this episode, then please smash that 5-star rating on iTunes or Spotify and leave a review. We value your comments, and we want to hear from you in the community. Thank you for listening. God bless you, and we'll see you next week on the iSpark Change podcast.